not just on the Earth, but, within the universal sense.
Right.
And interestingly enough, the Illuminati have been thinking this way for hundreds of years, thousands of years. Because there's always a force that's been in contention that takes these very symbols that are used in Christianity and has turned it away. The most amazing symbol for Gnosticism is the serpent on the cross.
Right.
And interestingly enough, the area on Mars, and it's interesting to get back to Mars again, Cydonia, the name that's actually picked for the area that has the most compelling architectural structures, these structures that look artificially architectural, but they're the remnants of an ancient civilization on Mars. That idea is so amazing and mind-boggling, and the place is called Cydonia. Why? How did that happen? Is this, is it conspiratorial, or is it just, is it just chance? Is it something about almost a theurgic sort of
communication?
It kind of keeps these motifs intact
Yeah.
without our ever consciously being aware of it. The name Cydonia is actually what a quince is. And in the most ancient texts that talk about the golden apples or the apple of knowledge, what it was always symbolized was a quince, a yellow apple. It wasn't an orange. There were no yellow apples, like you can actually go buy these cultivars that are actually designed just lately to become yellow. But a quince itself is a different type of plant, type of fruit. And it's actual, interestingly enough, it's Pyrus Cydonia is its scientific name. Quince is actually the word for 5, too. It's the number 5.
Right.
It's planted out from the sun as Mars. There's other things, too. The Pentagon in the United States, which houses all our war powers, which, of course, connects to the god Mars. It's a pentagon, number 5. Go back to Cydonia on Mars, and you find a huge pentagon. It's almost 2 miles long, around 1,700 feet high.
The D&M pyramid, right?
Yeah, it's a pyramidal shape, and it is, of course, I'm not really sure what the actual rise over run is for the angles of the walls of the thing, but you can see it has 5 points, 5 sides. It's a pentagon,
right,
for all intents and purposes. So you have these universal symbols manifesting on a planet in our solar system and on the Earth that are connected.
Yeah.
And that is so compelling, I think, in itself that I'll write another book on it. And another thing I think is once this kind of gets into the way out, and this is the idea of an artificial moon itself actually existing in our solar system. And I don't know, you've probably heard this of Iapetus and the work that Richard Hoagland did on it and some of the imagery that came from Saturn.
Indeed, some of the ridges and even the comparison to the Death Star, right?
Yeah, it's a geodesic sort of, it's faceted. It looks, for all intents and purposes, as maybe a carbon fiber type hollow moon with 2 halves. He was writing about this. I was in correspondence with him, and I said, if you look into the Greek myth about Tartarus, or even what the ancient Hebrew and Greek writings in the Bible say about Tartarus, the place of the evil dead, where the Titans were supposedly kept. It's interesting that it talks about a place being so far in the depths. It's interesting. The words are kind of obscure. It says that if you would drop a boulder, it would take several years for it to fall as far as Tartarus' seat. And that there's these bands, these walls around Tartarus, 3 bands of iron around Tartarus that keeps the evil dead there, these evil giants, these titans, from ever leaving. But then you look at Iapetus and you see a ridge of mountains, 3 parallel ridges of mountains that rise higher than the Himalayas on a moon that only has I'm not exactly sure, it's maybe a fourth the size of our moon.
Really?
And you're seeing something greater, almost 20 three times as high as the Himalayan mountains in a perfectly parallel ridge around the very center of this object.
It's so bizarre.
You see something you think it's very interesting that has an interesting tie to this idea of a container, prison for some sort of being. And what I contended with, what I actually presented to Richard, was this idea that there may actually be an interaction between this object, according to some ancient prophecies, and the Earth in the future. The idea that this thing would actually be pushed or towed to the Earth and its contents opened, and indeed is a prison for beings so powerful and evil that they had to be kept there. But that's way out, that's a real freaky thought.
Sure.
It's just, it's just putting a couple of these symbols together.
Right.
And it's not,
Because, I mean, if we kind of ponder upon that a little bit more about the fact that we might have a return, if you will, of the Watchers or of these beings. I mean, you've made some really, interesting discoveries when it comes to the number 33 again and Mount Hermon, isn't that right?
Yeah, that according to the Book of Enoch and the Book of Jasher, that is the place where the Watchers came down. And you think, well, of all the mountains on the earth, why would they choose there? I mean, this is before the nation of Israel, obviously. This is before any Hebrew existed, or any Jew. And, Heber had to exist before Hebrews existed, and Judah before the Jews. And this is even before Abraham. This is the first thing that happens when civilization begins. This is actually purveyors of civilization. Their name actually is ubiquitous with the word for city in Hebrew.
Yeah.
And they picked this one place. And so I thought, okay, we'll look back at the theurgic sort of connections of things. There's no place on this earth where 33 actually hits dry land as latitude and longitude near, except it's in the ocean, except on this place near Mount Hermon.
Yeah.
And the one sticking point is we have a longitudinal system that's anchored on Greenwich, so that's 0 meridian. So when you move over to where Mount Hermon is, you're actually seeing 35 degrees east of Greenwich. But the Templars, who focused, of course, on the Temple of Jerusalem, and I think they knew a lot of what I was talking about a little bit, the centrality of it, the symbolism of it, the power of that location.
Yeah.
They had their 0 meridian through Paris.
Right, the Rose Line.
2.20 degrees less. So that puts you at 33 1/3 then, instead of 35 degrees where the Greenwich meridian is. And it doesn't put you exactly on the highest peak of Mount Hermon.
Right.
It puts you on that ridge. But right now, if you're going to actually look at Google where 33 longitude hits and 33 latitude hits north, you're going to end up next to Cyprus. And I can't tell you how many people have written me and said, "You're you're
wrong.
You're lying to us.
Yeah.
This doesn't happen." And I said, "No, there's hundreds of different, longitudinal meridians. They're all arbitrary."
Of course.
And the one I'm talking about was the one that was the most illuminated, and that's pretty much why it is illuminated, because you end up finding that that's where Mount Hermon is. And Mount Hermon, the Watchers are absolutely connected to this number of 33, because number 33 is a third, and it's a third of the angels in Revelation 12 that are thrown to the earth. And through Revelation over and over again, as that last point in history where that those rebel forces, those rebel angels that have decided to follow or that line with Satan, are brought to this earth and kept here. Well, here in Genesis 6, you have them coming down to Mount Hermon, and the extra biblical books go into detail about they sign a pact with each other. One angel named Semyaza sets it up so that it's like 200 of them are what they actually start with on this place, and they all say, well, we will all do this. We will all do this thing. We will all corrupt the seed of mankind, and we'll all do this and agree together, because apart we'll all be condemned. And so the name Hermon actually means to be desolate or to be condemned.
Really?
And but that's not what the locals, the Sidonians called it. There's actually where Lebanon is now was called Sidonia. Interestingly enough, here is the country where Mount Hermon is, where the Watchers, who are called the exact same root for the word for Mars, the ear for Aries.
Mm-hmm.
They're the ones that come down, and now we find a place on Mars itself called Sidonia, where we find evidence of some of the greatest buildings or remnants of civilization in the solar system. Anyway, it's a 33 1/3, north and south. North and east, latitude and longitude.
Right.
So I start thinking, is this pointing to a time again? I mean, is it merely just stating, okay, it's a third of these angelic forces, or is there something more? And it's pretty easy. I mean, 30. If you're looking at time itself, how many minutes are in 33 hours and 33 minutes? Well, in 33 hours, there's 1,980.
Yeah.
And if you add 33 more minutes, you get 2013. Now, basically, it's right between 2012 2013. So that's exactly the number that you find, again, when you're actually measuring over the Earth's surface. And if the Earth is a perfect sphere, and this is how this is found, it's the mean sort of average of the Earth as being a perfect sphere, 33.33 degrees of the Earth's surface, from the shortest point, from the shortest distance from 2 points, which would necessarily be part of the great circle of the Earth. Every time you actually draw a line between 2 points, if you extended that line continuously around the Earth, it would be as far around the greatest circumference of the Earth as could actually fit a circle.
Right.
That's called the great circle of the Earth. 33.33 degrees of that is 2013, 2012 nautical miles. And it's always been that way since navigation began. And so it's repeated in that way. And to find, in modern times, this idea of a descent, say, alien descent. But you could as easily say, well, it's an angelic descent. I mean, an angel is just a messenger.
Sure.
Aliens seem to always be purveying some message.
Yeah.
And 9 times out of 10, it's about hard times coming to this Earth, cataclysms coming to this Earth. Here, these things fall to the ground at 33 degrees north latitude in Roswell, New Mexico. And you were talking about the Rose Line, Paris. Well, there's another etymological connection there. The Roswell. I mean, every portion of that event, the timing, the words, the etymology, the geometry, they all fit the same paradigm, and they are all meaningful. And it's perfect theurgy. It's perfect angelic communication. In a way that's, I guess I would explain it as the higher life form you are, the more capable you are of conveying information at one point. And
so you do it at multiple levels at a time, right?
I'm sorry?
Yeah, so you do it on like multiple levels at one time, right?
Yeah, and it's a fractal. It's like a holograph.
Yeah.
And that's what's occurring. You can pick apart what's occurring with the UFO flap in Mexico City, which began in 1991. And according to Jaime Maussan, I think, who's worked in Mexico City for a while as a news reporter, news broadcaster, and comes to a lot of these Roswell conferences, he was saying that it's continuing since that point, and he thinks that it has a lot to do with pointing out the calendar, the end of the Mayan calendar, because when the flap actually occurred over Mexico City, it was 1991. And I believe that was 666 years from the actual founding date of Tenochtitlan in Mexico City.
Really?
And then if you count forward farther, you actually find that 2012 ends up being 687, which is in years. That's exactly